I now have the pleasure of introducing these fine individuals up here and this panel of folks to share with you some of the things going on the R3 front. And I'll introduce all the folks, and then each of them will speak, and we'll have some Q&A at the end. And so first, I want to introduce Micah Holmes, Assistant Chief of Communications and Education Division within the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. And then Justin Grider, who is the R3 Coordinator with Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And then Jenifer Wisniewski, who is Director of Marketing and Special Projects with the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. And these individuals have a number of tips and things to share with you from their various experiences in working on the R3 front with their agencies, and each agency kind of coming from a little bit different perspective and what they've been doing and where they might be at in phases of plans and coordinators and things like that. But each of these agencies we selected to be part of invited to share some of their tips with you all, in that, as you may know, each year we implement an annual State Angler R3 scorecard with the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Angler and Boater R3 Committee to assess progress against the Angler R3 recommendations. And the year 3 assessment was most recently conducted last year, so May, June, and we'll do another this year. But year 3, in May of June of last year, Alabama was the top scoring state for their increases from year 2 to year 3. And Oklahoma was the top scoring state for their increases from year 1 to year 3. And then Tennessee is also one that stood out in that each year they've been in the top 10 and also increased their score from year 1 to year 3. So these folks have lots of things going on the R3 front and how they've been working on an agency and prioritizing that. And I'm excited for the tips and insights they have for you all here. And so I'm going to let them share their information, and I'm going to first turn it to Micah Holmes. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, let's start it off and see if we can offend somebody just right off the bat. Your personal opinion on R3 doesn't matter as much as the opinions of those experts. There's some real experts in the room. Folks like Matt Dunphy and Rob Southwick and Mark Duda and DJ Case and Stephanie and Jenifer. There's some people that have been in the R3 game for a long time, and their opinions matter. They've made a lot of mistakes and done a lot of research, and so consult the experts when it's time to come up with your R3 plan, to come up with an R3 idea. Pick up the phone and call one of those folks. There's a pretty good chance they've done some research. They may have some best practices. So, in my experience is that they're very eager to talk with you. Sometimes when you get them on the phone, you can't get them off because they want to share all these R3 insights they have. And second of all, it just adds credibility and weight and some authenticity to the ideas that you already have. There's been a few things where I'll present something to my staff or to my bosses, and I don't know. And I said, well, Jenifer's doing it in Tennessee. Like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea then. And that's a real thing. I'm not making that up. So consult the experts. Number two, here we go. I don't know about you, but FTEs in Oklahoma don't grow on trees. My boss isn't coming to you and to me and saying, hey, do you need some more people? Do you need some more human resources to work on stuff? You know, they're not saying that. They're saying, R3 is really important, figure it out. And there's these little windows of time when you have promotions, when you have transfer, when you have resignations, to put more time, effort, and energy into R3. And those are the times to make hay when you can. So with every vacancy in your agency, especially when there's a vacancy in your division, whatever it is, communications, education, marketing, whatever you call it, that's an opportunity to spend more time, less time, or the same time on R3. So be thinking of those as opportunities when someone leaves to say, do I want to spend more time on R3? That's how we got an R3 coordinator in Oklahoma on the fishing side. We had some upheaval, some people moving around, and we took a look at that and says, hey, we've always wanted our R3 coordinator. Here it is. Okay, number 3, don't follow the money. It's very tempting when you have limited resources to just put in for a grant because there's money available. If the organization that is putting this grant out is not in a direct parallel path to what you're trying to do R3-wise, then just take a hard pass. There'll always be more grants. There'll always be more money, believe it or not. Whenever you trade your agenda, your own R3 agenda for someone else's, you're taking time and effort and focus away from your own R3 plan. So, you know, if there's a grant out there for doing social media marketing, that may be a good thing, but if that's not what your focus is, then don't do it. Stick with the email campaigns or whatever it is. And sometimes that comes from your own internal audiences. A commissioner or director may say something, hey, if we got you some money, could you do this? Could you do more fishing clinics? Well, fishing clinics really aren't our thing right now. We're trying to do this other thing over here, so no. It's okay to say no to money. It's okay to not put in for a grant. Now, when those grants do come up, go all in, but just don't put in for grants, don't follow the money just because that seems like the thing to do. Justin?
Micah, thank you. Stephanie, thank you for the introduction. Micah, thank you for sharing your intellectual property, which is this list of 10 bullet points. He was being really humble when he mentioned the professionals. He didn't mention himself, but it's an honor to be on stage with you guys. Thank you for the opportunity. Jenifer, thank you for putting the Prezi together. This thing looks great. It's an honor to be up here. So in addition to following the money, so this next point, bullet point 4, we'll talk about is saying no. So that those two things can be interpreted very similarly. I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about our new program, so the Mid-Shore Fishing Program, Go Fish Alabama, was supported by RBFF, and we were able to create two, what RBFF coins the Mobile First Catch Centers. And part of that new program came lots of new opportunities. And so in a lot of ways, that can be a really great thing. But when you look at any state agency, just like Micah mentioned, you've got limited number of staffing, you've got limited resources that you can devote towards certain things. There were situations where we were required to say no in order to focus on our mission, which was to recruit some new anglers and reactivate lapsed anglers. So sometimes as a state agency, as somebody who's lacking resources, you struggle with saying no, but sometimes saying no is what you need to do in order to do things extremely well. And you guys have probably heard iterations of that saying. It could be a mile wide or an inch deep, or you can focus on singular things and do them extremely well. Point number 5, compound interest. So we talk about one-time activities and one-touch points. I think this ties in really well with the outdoor recreation adoption model, which you guys have probably seen, and if you haven't seen, could pull it up with a quick Google search. So this ties into our last point as well. We mentioned that Go Fish Alabama program and that Mobile First Catch Center. And we developed a strategy that involved multiple touch points. So building on that compound interest, we get folks to that first event and they have an interaction with us as an agency. They have an interaction with our partners. And then in addition to that, so we've got a picture here. We were out front of an Academy outdoors store. This was a promotion, so we were able to send incentives, so coupons, to those new license buyers. And then we got in front of existing anglers, and then we were able to share a message about our outreach programs, and then we were able to maintain some relevancy in front of existing anglers. It was really cool to see folks coming up and interacting with us, folks that were going in to, believe it or not, buy a bag of potato chips at Academy, that went in and bought fishing rods and tackle, and hadn't done that for years. So it's really cool to see how you can tie your program efforts together so that they complement one another so that you can build on that compound interest. And this 6th point, I think this is the most important of the three that I'm talking about because specifically, Stephanie mentioned our improvement on our R3 scorecard, and that's not attributed solely to me. I would be remiss without giving credit to our director. I'm not just saying that because he's here, but his foresight, him making it a priority to focus on R3, and then our fisheries staff, our communications and marketing staff, all these folks played a part in improving our score. So very thankful for their support. The slide mentions that I Am R3 campaign right there. So that came about as a result of our director prioritizing R3. He said, I want you to go around the state and I want you to train our employees on R3. I want you to tell them what it is. And so this was still kind of on the back end of the pandemic. We have 5 district offices. So long story short, I thought, well, maybe there's another way to skin this cat. And then we did some collaborating. And long story short, the I Am R3 campaign came about as a result. We did an online training module, questions. All the staff went through that. And that was right on the front end of that new fisheries outreach program. And you wouldn't believe how well those two things tied together, where they see how important R3 is. They see how our R3 relates directly to their job, whether they're answering the phone in the front office or whether they're running a fish hatchery. And then it encouraged folks to get involved with that new outreach program, which helped us with some of the limiting staff issues that maybe you run into. So we didn't have to say no as often as maybe we would have in the past. And it encouraged all the staff members to make this a priority and has been a resounding success. And we continue to prioritize R3. We have multiple touch points throughout the year. You talk about CRMs. I know Brant mentioned that earlier too. We have that as an agency standpoint too. So it's to stay engaged with our staff and stay connected to them and make leadership or make R3 a priority. And that is a direct result of the dynamic in our agency. And so major kudos to our director. And we talk about R3 coordinator. That job title lands on such a spectrum across agencies and NGOs, and it can mean so many different things. It's really loosely interpretable. In our case in Alabama, and Mr. Craig mentioned this in Texas as well, I'm very fortunate, so I report directly to the director, and I can't tell you how much easier that has made increasing communication across our divisions and across our sections, and just being able to stroll into people's offices and have very candid conversations. It has helped the user group, which is ultimately what we're all here for. So if you're not in a state agency or an NGO that has that position prioritized, I challenge you to prioritize that position and put them in a situation that allows them to succeed. Jenifer?
All right, thanks Justin, and thanks Micah and Stephanie for teeing up the last few of these. But I did want to take a second and thank you for the opportunity to present. Did you know this is my 10th RBFF? This is my 10th anniversary. This meeting, I've met more people that are actually marketing and communications people. And that's a first. I mean, Dave, you pointed it out this morning, but when I was first introducing myself to people at RBFF, I'm a wildlife biologist, but I'm also the communications director for an agency. So it was, biologists turned to another skill set, but now we're hiring people with the right skill sets to do the thing, right? So great, wonderful job. Thank you, directors. So let's talk about, this is an interesting clicker. Okay. So the last few things that you can do that are great stealable ideas for R3 takeaways is, okay, everybody have a plan? Does everybody have a R3 plan?
No.
All right, I do not, but I'm working on it. I've never had an R3 plan in either of the states that I've worked for, but that shouldn't stop you from doing R3. You can still do R3 without having a plan, and you just have to know that you're going to be the one that's rowing the boat. But you should be making a plan so that you can get everybody in the agency rowing the boat at the same time in the same direction. But a way that we started doing R3 without having an R3 plan was RBFF got us a mobile first catch center, and we have taken this thing all over the state in order to do, drop in, fishing things, fishing events, and they've been enormously popular. And we track these events in our event system so that we will be able to track the participants that come to mobile first catch centers and are able to, see if that creates lifetime license purchasers from there, so we can see their behavior. But again, we are going through the process of creating a plan, and we are using the experts, and we are using DJ Case as our consulting firm to be able to really go through the process and get everybody that's in the agency to understand R3 and understand the importance of that, because even though you might know what you're talking about, you got to get everybody to get bought into this whole R3 thing. And yes, it's very important that the brass down is involved in that making your plan too, because if they assign it off to you and then you go do it with a bunch of people that are, maybe not as high up on the totem pole and there's no body with a hammer there, then it's less likely to be adopted and as successful. So yeah, have a plan. Number 8, any guesses? Use your data. How many people here know enough about their license data? You feel like you could answer any question if somebody threw it out at you. I bet none of us can, really. Rob Southwick could probably come the closest. But, if we're not using our data and knowing where or what our customers are doing, then we're not doing our job, right? So I brought a couple of snippets of the data dashboards that we have, and if you are also a Brant state and lucky enough to have Brant as your license vendor, you probably see these too. But there are other great license vendors out there like S3 and Terra I see in the room, and they will work with you to get this type of thing for your state. So this is zip code, a heat map zip code of license holders in the state of Tennessee. I need this. I don't know where to focus my efforts without this. So that's hovering over a zip code. I know how many people in that zip code are licensed, what time of year they bought their license, lots of things, what licenses they bought, how much they spent on a transaction. Without that kind of data, how do you know where to focus and where not to focus? If you've got county or zip codes that have such a high density of license holders that they're, off the charts, well, you don't need to go focus there at all. You don't need to have events there. You can stop. R3 success, right? You need to go focus on those light shaded counties that their per capita density of license holders are not as high. And without this data, you're driving blind, right? You're just like pin the tail on the donkey, you're throwing darts blindfolded. You don't know where to focus your efforts. So know where your license holders are. This is what we call our key performance indicators dashboard. This is my daily go-to. Perfect example, right now we're in general session for our legislature, and we have guy Chris Richardson that goes downtown and makes sure nothing crazy happens, right, under all of the wise people that are elected to office that solve problems every day. Sometimes their solutions can be, whoa, they can have consequences. So it's always good for him to have in his pocket, here's the sales. We have 1 million licensed people in Tennessee to hunt or fish, and that's 1 in 6 Tennesseans. We know that we have 225,000 lifetime license holders. We know that, all of those types of just tidbits that we can get off of this. It's huge for him to know that, and it's also great for your director or yourself so that you can give a good elevator speech about your agency if ever you're given the opportunity to do so. News interviews, there's all sorts of things. I like to give out infographic about our agency to the whole agency every year, so everybody kind of has a sort of handle on what's going on, what our numbers are, what we look like as an agency, how many acres we manage, how many miles of streams and reservoirs, and all of those kinds of things, so that they can have them at the fingertips. But that's all in your data. And another thing that I really like to look at here, you'll see the top 3 licenses that we sold last license year, which we went to 365 this week, no more license years for us. But the number 1 is our basic combo. That's the thing that's required, right? The number 2 thing that we sold all year was a hard card, optional, you don't have to have it, $5 add-on, waterproof, cool, collectible card. The number 3 thing that we sold last year was a $5 donation roundup. So 2 out of the top 3 things that we sold as an agency were optional. You don't even have to have them. Another thing that we do is an e-store. So we sell hats and stickers and keychains and that kind of stuff. Stuff that we used to give away as an agency, we started selling. And let's see, the first year we made $200,000, and the second year we made close to $400,000. And what we do with that money is we go buy licenses for 4-H kids, for NASP kids, so that money comes right back from our foundation into the agency as license revenue, and also counts for certification. Look at that, because we bought kids' licenses. So another idea to steal. But yeah, knowing your data, knowing your sales daily. I know exactly where we stand. We're $3 million down from last year, but last year we were $7 million up. So really we ended the year up from our regular by about $4 million. So we're still doing great. Retention data. How many people know how many customers they retained in 2020 and in 2021? Did anybody beat me? I retained 80% this past year. I retained 80% of the people that bought a license in 2020. My goal was 90. I failed at my goal, but we got 80. And there, again, we can see the gender breakdown, right? We know we've got work to do. We can see the age group breakdown. We've got work to do. So again, knowing your data, this is going to show you where you need to focus your efforts, especially with communications and marketing. So those are the things that I keep in my back pocket. After knowing your data, we got to control what you can. When you control what you can, this is also one of the span of control, the 7 habits of highly successful people, right? If you focus things that are within your span of control, you don't get discouraged and frustrated and stuff. You just got to identify what your real span of control is and work within it. When people see results from well-evaluated events and well-run events and well-run marketing campaigns and communication campaigns, they will understand what you're doing, right? And then they'll start going, hey, she's onto something over there. Because when I came to Tennessee 3 years ago, I don't know, Dale's here, he could probably tell you, people were like, I don't know, this new girl, she's doing some crazy things. And there was not a lot of people that were like, yay, welcome, Jenifer. They were like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? And I am just now, after 3 years of seeing some results, the people are like, okay, maybe she's onto something. Okay, we're having increasing budgets. What? Yes. Our agency's budgets are increasing because we've got more license revenue. And I can say, hey, everybody, you know how? You know why? Because we did this marketing, and that made us this extra money. And so now we're adding positions. We're doing extra things. You know, it's a place that I've never been at as a state agency employee. So, you know, R3 is working. Like, it's doing what it's supposed to do. So, but control what you can until you get there, right? So there was some years that, okay, all I can control is the marketing and communications campaign I'm doing, our first catch center, some events that my little division's doing, but now, you know, once everybody sees it, then they start getting on the boat. And the last thing, and I don't know why they wanted me to talk about this one, but get involved. So I've never been really asked to do anything. I've always been the one to raise my hand and say, I'll do it. Have a I'll do it spirit, right? So if you're not involved in any kind of organization, I would strongly encourage you to get involved in the Association for Conservation Information, get involved in your regional AFWA groups. Nobody asks for volunteers. You just got to go and get in there. And you got to go meet some people. They have virtual options now if your bosses aren't going to let you travel. There's lots of opportunity to get involved. There are, with the new MultiState Grant format, that there's more funds available that way. A lot of regional organizations like CAFWA, MAFWA, WAFWA too, are getting multi-state grants, and you can control or help say what each of those grant fund dollars goes towards if you get involved. Perfect example, Alabama applied for a grant from ACI. And he just, you know, he threw it in there. Justin tried. He did a great job. And guess what? This year, Alabama's getting $50,000 of grant funds because he applied for grant funding. And that's all he did. And now he's on the committee that is running that whole grant program for CAFWA. So, I mean, you can really make a difference for your state when you get involved in a lot of those things that seem like, oh, that's not really my job, that's too big, that's national level or regional level, I gotta focus here. You can make a difference in your state if you're getting in these committees and groups. Let's see, oh, and then call your counterparts. Know who they are, at least in all the bordering states to you. Know who they are, call them often, discuss what you're doing, vent, whatever you have to do. But make sure that you're calling other people from other states that are in your role. I welcome those calls. If you need a partner to start with, I will be glad to. But call folks and make some relationships so that you can walk through some things with people when you hit a roadblock, because that's been one of the most valuable things that has been. Aaron Meyer, perfect example of a guy I call. Hey, what are you doing about this? God, that's a way better idea than what I'm doing. So then I steal his idea. I work at the cutting edge of theft, Dave. Cutting edge of theft. All right, so I think that's it. That's top 10 things that will get you to be more successful at R3 if you take it from the pros of R3 up here. I was going to say the grandparents of R3, but Justin, I just can't.
Thank you, Jenifer.
Great job.
Thank you, Jenifer, Justin, and Micah for everything shared here in the top 10. And yeah, as Jenifer stated, I did not read her bio, which is in the app. In the interest of time, I didn't go through all her accolades and involvements on there, but she has definitely been involved throughout the community, and I'm going to add to what she said and challenge you all to get involved, because believe it or not, Jenifer can't do it all, and I don't want to see this poor woman burned out from all the things that she volunteers for, and there's so much to be shared out there from your region associations, from the national committee levels, both at the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, ACI, the Association for Conservation Information, and other groups out there to get involved in. And so just another plug there, because she's absolutely right that that's how I've seen folks engage and get their networks going and learn from each other what's out there. So thank you each for sharing. I'm gonna, before I open up to questions here, I'm gonna ask if there's anything either of you, any of you want to add to what others said, and at any point in time you can do that, but let me just ask you if there's anything you want to add to any of the other points. Yeah, Justin.
So I just wanted to reiterate and back up Jenifer. When she says call her, she means call her. She's genuine about that. Email her, reach out to her, and get plugged in. I can't tell you how much that has helped. You know, I've got direct support in my agency, and then this incredible national network of people that have been so helpful. So use that as your starting point. That's an incredible tool at your disposal.
Thank you. Anything else?
I'd also reiterate, consult the experts, because it's like a different ball game when Rob Southwick comes in and says, this is what the scientific survey says, than when you say, as an employee of the agency, to the powers that be, or just to the people in the room. It just, even if you said, Rob Southwick said this, it still doesn't carry the same weight, still it makes a difference. It really does.
Mike, I know you're saying no, but can I ask you to speak about your R3 planning process? Because I know I've heard you talk about it before and how it's driving a lot of what you're doing within the agency.
Yeah, we came up with an R3 plan. It's one area we're ahead of Jenifer. We actually have a plan. It came about as part of our strategic plan. The strategic plan told us to develop an R3 plan. We brought DJ Case and Stephanie and some others into Oklahoma to invite them to say, this is the things we want to do, help us come up with a plan. And really, we spent most of our time, it's kind of frustrating for me, but in just bringing everybody else up to speed on what R3 is, convincing us that we need an R3 plan. And once you get your biologists and others around up to speed and really geared up in R3, then they're going to be the ones that are driving you and saying, hey, let's go with the R3 plan, let's go with the R3 plan. And it has also really helped us on the back end too, on things like, you know, we didn't put in for the Vamos a Pescar program for years because we weren't really clear if that was a direction we wanted to go as an agency or not. But in our R3 plan, we hashed all that out and says this is something we're going to go after, these communities. So when the grant opened up again, it was easy. We don't have to discuss it. It's in the plan. We have to do it. Sorry. And we're on our second year now of Almost Up Our Scar. So the plan is difficult to put together, but it really makes the decision making on the back end easier.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we have worked with a number of states to make sure everyone does know that we do have resources to help you all in the R3 planning process, and consultants like DJ Case and Associates and Wildlife Management Institute and Matt Dunphy to help on that. And I know we've worked with many of you all in this room and online, and just want to say a reminder that we're here to help you all on that R3 planning, because it can really help shape and drive where you're moving in the future. And I know Dave was just quoting last night from one of our experiences in working with one of the states is, a fish hatchery biologist in the R3 planning process was like, maybe we don't need to put all this money over here in this fish hatchery and start supporting this R3 initiative over there, or support hiring a new R3 coordinator, et cetera. So it's shifting of hats through that whole process. But now I'm going to open it up for questions and ask you all to engage in some dialogue with these folks, pick their brains, and or share your experiences. So I see Tim over here with a question. I'll get you a mic runner, but I'm not going to ask them to run clear across the room yet. So hang on a second. And then staff, just let me know if you have things online. Tim's over here, sorry.
Jenifer mentioned the 365 license, so why did you make that move?
Southwick did the study, and it said our customers want 365-day licenses, so we did it.
I would welcome throughout the next day and a half to hear from other states that either have made the move or haven't made the move, because we just got rid of our display requirement recently after it should have been gone a long time ago. And
so there's 10 states that have a 365, and I'll give you the list after this.
Good, thank you.
And we will see maybe a little bit of dip in certification, but certification's been so high lately that the results is going to be nil.
Okay, thanks.
She's going to Rob Southwick and then Paul up here afterward.
Thanks. I just want to dig into Jen's experience a little bit more.
Rob Southwick from Southwick Associates.
Rob Southwick, Southwick Associates. Thank you, Stephanie. The 80% retention number is phenomenal. I mean, nationally, it's around 55%, 57%. Has been that way for decades. Share a little bit. What specifically are you doing maybe different than other states?
Oklahoma beat me. We
Let's hear it from
have a
Bucky
little SEC, Brant Family Stage competition, and I like to be number one, but I was not. I think I was number 3. But so there is a suite of communications that we have going out to people that have purchased licenses. We have an onboarding series depending on what license you purchase to have resources that support you through your journey. We have, all of these social things that keep going. We have virtual classes. We have in-person classes. We try to plug in partners to our calendar. It's all the stuff that everybody's been doing. It's just finally gelling, right? All of the marketing pieces, all of the emails, we have push notifications through our app. We have all these things that are just gelling, that are making an impact on those numbers. But yeah, Micah beat me.
Yeah, and so much of it is it's not glamorous. It's just blocking and tackling. It's making sure that folks are getting a reminder when their licenses are set to expire. It's making sure that you're being real strategic with your social media dollars and not wasting them and spending on people that are likely to lapse. And you gave a shout out to Brant too, but Brant has been a great partner in helping us figure that out and what's working in Tennessee and the other states. And so, they're also expert too, Tara and S3. Lean on them to figure out what the data is telling them, because it's in their best interest too to sell licenses. So they are getting very sophisticated, and we're really learning from each other. But a lot of it's just doing the grinding, dirty work, and repeat.
Are you guys getting extra drink tickets from the licensed vendors? Is that what it is?
Yes, I'm transparent.
Kendra, because I see you have the mic, and then Paul's next after
Is it
that.
on? Yeah, I just wanted to comment, Kendra Wecker from Ohio Division of Wildlife. Just even the simple things, like I contacted Jenifer a few years ago. I needed a position description for a marketing expert, and I didn't have one. And so she gave me one. And so that helped create the foundation of our marketing team. And just that was a simple thing that, ask. We can all share these things, and we're getting back in the game too here in Ohio. So again, thank you for your leadership in marketing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kendra.
Paul, yeah.
Paul Johansson, West Virginia Division of Natural Resources. I just want to give a shout out to RBFF and for their assistance in terms of helping West Virginia pull together their strategic R3 plan. Bringing experts in is what it's all about. And so we had Phil Sang from DJ Case and Matt Dunphy from WMI and Stephanie yourself come in and really get us on the right track. We actually had Steffi on a morning radio show talking about
That's
R3.
not how you got on track.
We had to pump her with a bunch of coffee, but it worked, right? So thank you for that. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. But my question is, so we've got a strat plan now, and I think it's good. I think it's solid. We probably need more help. In West Virginia, I need a lot of help anyway. How do we implement? Is there an opportunity? Can RBFF, in addition to the marketing workshop, which is just fantastic, is there any thought out there with regards to taking it the next step in operationalizing strategic plans and helping states do that?
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and we enjoyed working with you and your team in many states. And I'll ask others to join in here because I'll ask that of others as well, is how can we help you all? We're in that next phase. I think Iowa has reached out to us as they're in their next phase of the next iteration, if you will, of their R3 plan for a next time frame and want to work on that next step. Arkansas recently reached out to us to partner with them to help on evaluating their efforts in that next step plan. So we want to continue to support you all in that next step and whatever that looks like in each state. So Paul, let's specifically for you all invite that dialogue to have that, but I don't know if you guys have anything you want to share on that too, and or other states.
Great idea.
I know we're just getting started, Jenifer, and there's a number of states in here that are, again, in various phases in that R3 planning process, and it looks different in every state and how we go about that process and whatever you all need. So, thank you for bringing that up, Paul, and we want to continue to support you all. Who has the mic? Thank you. Yes, please.
Thanks. Jordan from Ohio. So I was curious for anyone on stage or in the room if they are conducting post surveys of R3 participants and what the return rate on that is. And additionally, another question is that has there been any surveys or questionnaires sent out to R3 participants and then kind of the web that has been spun by them with friends, family, colleagues that have been introduced into hunting and fishing and the license sales from that?
I can speak to post-event surveys. When you say R3 participant, you mean like somebody that's come to a state agency event? Is that what you're, okay. So we get somewhere between 3 and 5%. On some events, Becoming an Outdoors Woman being one of them, we get very high rates of survey return. They're in the 20s, but on most of our just 101 basic classes or virtual classes, it's between 3 and 5%.
Yeah, and it's a best practice. Absolutely, we don't always do it, but we try, and it pays off because we had a deer summit last summer, and one of the follow-up questions was, would you be interested in trapping? Well, our trapping biologist saw that and ended up having a trapping workshop. It was just for 15 people, but we marketed directly to those people. Hey, you said you were interested in trapping. Well, here's a trapping workshop. So we didn't have to waste any of our voice on, shouting out into the void. We knew who those people were. So again, we're not great at it, but it's something we certainly try to do, and it pays off.
And if you're not surveying participants, you're leaving a lot of valuable information on the table. We use that information to improve our programs, to streamline them, to make decisions like Jenifer mentioned about the Southwick study. And I really think it enhances the experience for future participants, whether that been their first time at our programs or multiple touch points like we talked about with that compound interest. But you bring up a good question about the value associated with that is essentially what you were alluding to, it seemed like. And we aren't specifically looking into those connections maybe that are taking place as a result of those outreach efforts, but that would be some good information to know. It's a great
Sounds
point.
like the beginnings of a multi-state grant, Rob Southwick.
And I'll say that tomorrow afternoon we have some time for, it's on the schedule for some huddles discussion, and really there's an open dialogue to create space for this sharing and of experiences and what folks are undertaking from the retention aspect and next steps moving forward and evaluation. There's a number of questions that prompt that dialogue. So I encourage you all to be thinking about how to answer these questions and invite that in that space tomorrow. Stephanie, are there some questions online?
We do have one question from online. Can any of you share more about how you're using R3 in social media specifically?
I don't call it R3 on social media. I call it selling licenses. So it's ads that are developed. We use, in this year's ads, women and minorities. Thank you very much, because I'm being the change. But yeah, we use ads that are targeted to people that don't have a license, that are lookalikes, that are likely. We have gone into TikTok, and it's been profitable. We use content creators. I don't know if you heard Kelsey this morning, but these micro-influencers, we don't go after the big names because likely they'll do something dumb, and then we won't want to be attached to them at all. So the micro-influencers that are just good people that like to fish, like to do stuff outside, and we help them out. So we do that a lot, and then we'll boost those ads. We'll pay money to, after they've run it, we'll run those segments that they've created as ads. But yeah, organically, we don't do a whole lot, but we do several posts like, don't forget to renew your license, that kind of thing. But it's all based around license sales more than it is, come to our R3 event. Like, nobody knows what R3 is.
And generally, advertising in the social media space is very affordable, yes?
Yes.
And there's a number on that. There's a number of presentations this afternoon in the breakout sessions that all have social media and digital advertising aspects in their campaigns, and so you can hear a lot more from them and their experiences on that front. Brad, please.
Yeah, Brad Lovelace from Kansas. The question came up about repeat customers when it comes to R3, and we have some interesting stuff in Kansas. The neat thing about reaching out to underserved communities is we have more than 100% return on some of those. We have done Vamos a Pescar, and I was participating in that a couple times last summer in the Hispanic community, and the numbers build up each session we did, right? They invited their friends. That's one of the cool things about reaching out to those underserved communities is they tell each other, and they bring more, in subsequent events. So that was really neat. The one point I wanted to make, there's some excellent marketers up here. In Kansas, we never had a marketing person because tourism was attached to us for a number of years. We've sent them back to commerce, and when we did, I realized, wow, we benefited so much from having a marketing expertise internal to the agency because we've got a lot of great biologists that all suck at telling our story, right? Really bad. So hiring a marketing person, if you haven't considered that, is something you need to do because they are much better. The expertise they bring will astound you when you add them to your meetings and somebody has a great idea about something we ought to do, and they'll say, well, I did some checking on the hits and all the metrics they use that I can't even say, and half of our great ideas were terrible ideas, and they stopped it before we ever got started. So very valuable. Think about hiring a marketing person if you haven't. Thanks.
Thanks, Brad. Dave, you want to add a comment?
Thanks, Brad. That was music to my ears to hear that. This would be to Paul, the director of West Virginia, because he's one of my favorites out there, and we're going to be there to help you implement that plan. But as you saw when Texas developed their plan, they developed a plan first, And now they're out there hiring the people that are going to implement the plan. And I would probably challenge you, as you see your next retirement or whoever that person happens to be in West Virginia, that's going to be the champion for your plan. And if that person doesn't exist within your agency, follow the suit of the good director of Tennessee and steal from a neighboring state so you can have somebody come in and hit the ground running. And I can't tell you how much that upset, Jenifer going to Tennessee really upset our former CEO. And the rest of us, Stephanie and I, were like cheering it on, saying, no, Georgia's all in on R3. They're going to replace Jenifer. They're going to hit the ground running. This is going to jumpstart Tennessee. So that would be my advice to you. Steal somebody from another state, and then we will work with you to make sure they're the best you can. We're doing this workshop for everybody, to help, advance what's the best techniques we have out there. But don't forget, RBFF also work with all of our partners because a lot of these people don't have the skill set. So we work to develop a training program at NCTC. Now, COVID shut it down, but NCTC is starting to open back up again. And for all the practitioners out there, when that program comes back online, if you're in the fisheries world, RBFF will pay for you to attend that training session. And we felt it was very important to have the continuing education. COVID set us a little bit back, but we're trying to work with NCTC to developing a parallel marketing training session to be conducted at NCTC so that when you hire that person, there's an additional place to go to, to implement your plan. So, we're there, whatever means it takes to get the job done. Being a former state person, I was never shy about borrowing an idea from another area. So, but we can even talk more later, Paul. Thank you for those comments.
Thanks, Dave. I see Janice has the mic, and I'll just say that they have some R3 positions open and a couple marketing positions open.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Stephanie. I was just going to say that. Dave opened the door. We are looking for a marketing specialist to replace another gentleman in the room who went to Massachusetts. How dare he, from Texas. Yeah. But someone else had to ask the question, okay, so you get a plan, and then what do you do? And we just kind of dumbed it down because we knew we needed to. We sat around long enough kind of working on the plan. We thought, now we got to start doing things. So in its simplest, what we did was we took the plan and we took every objective, strategy, and tactic, and we put it into a spreadsheet with tabs for fishing, tabs for boating, hunting, shooting. And we put it like a status report. Here's the tactic, what we said we were going to do. Here's the status. Here's the next step, here's the deadline, here's the team. And so then we had it, nobody was going to sit and read our, 50-page R3 plan as often as they would refer to a spreadsheet that had the actions. And Craig shared that we had implementation teams. And so we had fishing, boating, hunting, shooting, license, data, communications, and we made sure that we had a communications person on each of those other teams. Because, we leave the biologists off to themselves on a team, and they'll come up with biology, right? So we made sure we had some marketing folks in there. What else do we do? Also, we have made, probably because of COVID, great use of MS Teams, where each of our implementation teams have their own chats and their own channels and their own archives, and it's all together. So that's been really helpful in getting us organized and keeping it all together, even like who's on the team and that sort of stuff. And then one other point that y'all made about, or Jenifer made about getting involved, I agree. I just got on one of the grant committees for one of the regional associations. Why? Oh, to help others? No, to get more grant money because we don't have big budgets. And yeah, to keep involved. But the other thing is Joanne Martnick with RBFF holds monthly or every other month marketing conversations online, and I've got a lot of value. It's just like going on today. You get to hear from like 10 other people in other states on what's working for them and what's not. So I would encourage you to get involved with Joanne's phone calls. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. There are other questions? Where's the mic? Sorry. Barb, yeah.
Okay, so Jenifer, thank you for talking about that integrated approach where you weren't just doing the marketing, but you were talking about your education and outreach and how they all related together. Sometimes we keep talking about this or this, and it's all of that. So thank you. And one more organization I would like to shout out to. I've already met some newbies in angler education here. So Larry, Randy, Kimberly, and me, is there somebody I missed that are here with the Aquatic Resources Education Association? We're meeting in September. Especially if you're new to the field, you need to come hang out with us in South Dakota and learn a lot of things. And the evaluation piece, the survey fatigue is real, and I don't know that anybody does them anymore. And so now I'm feeling a whole lot better, about 15 or 16%. RBFF has some great foundational documents on best practices, and evaluation is one of those. Maybe we need to revisit that and talk about programmatic evaluation in a holistic way and all of the other things you need to be doing, and that would be a great multi-state grant.
Yes, it would.
Just a thought.
And as Barb says, South Dakota, she's in Iowa DNR, but she's doing a plug for the Aquatic Resources Education Association conference. When? Sorry, just my...
Last week of September.
Last week of September.
Sorry, I just want to follow up real quick on Janice's comment about the monthly or every other month marketing calls. Right now it's just with a handful of states, but I am looking to expand it. So in the next few weeks or months, I will be reaching out to more states, to everybody, so we can have a lot bigger, more productive conversations. So if you don't know about it yet, I'll be sending out more info soon about that.
Thanks, Joanne. And that really started as a output from the states involved in the digital marketing. So it wasn't a select group of people. It was a program they were working on, and it became a monthly need. So thanks, Joanne, for building on that for folks. Mike's other questions? Stephanie, do you have something online?
I have a comment going back about the post-survey question. Emily Stolarski said, NIAFWA has developed regional questions that include post-surveys, and they're available in the R3 Clearinghouse.
Yeah, the Northeast Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and Massachusetts team has been working really hard on helping guide a process to have some similar questions that are asked, a format of questions that are asked after events, pre and post events, and I don't know, Chris, if you want to speak more to what's all happening there in your team, but that, sorry, she's looking for Mike, but the idea was to have the same questions being asked throughout the different states to roll up. So yes, whoever made the comment in the chat, thank you for bringing that up.
You have a question here, Stephanie, in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I have to give kudos to Jody and the crew there that did this. Yeah, that's something that NIAFWA has started initiating, and we haven't been able to conduct any analysis that yet. It's the same barriers that pretty much everybody else runs into. But this is kind of goes back to what Jenifer was saying, that participate in those regions, those regionals and those national conferences. That's where a lot of this good stuff starts developing and getting down. And because we've had interest from other regions who have been interested in expanding that. So there's a really good opportunity for a future multi-state grant there. So it is absolutely, so that's what it is. It was a group of the same questions the states have agreed to ask, pre and post. And we're still running into several barriers with states being able to implement it, but it's a good model to have in place. So that's why I'll put the kudos, just what Jen said, get involved.
Yeah, and barriers also to clearly being able to host events during these times, the past 2 years too. So there's a microphone here, please.
Hi, I'm Jessica from the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources. And just back to chatting about social media and R3 on social media and kind of knowing how to fit that into your R3 plan. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about boosted posts and ads and kind of balancing that between the organic reach and then just other parts of the communication, like components in the plan. I guess, how would you recommend like finding what the balance is between boosted posts and email communications and organic reach, and kind of how much of your budget and like time and resources do you want to allocate to those boosted posts? Because I think, at least for the time I've been in this position, it's kind of trial and error, and we'll boost a post here, and then we won't boost a post for a couple weeks, and it's just kind of random. But I would love to have maybe more of a plan and a more data-driven approach, and I'm not quite sure how to find it.
I've tried calling Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know the algorithms. Yeah, we guess a lot of times, and there's no science to it. And in our plan that we're developing now, it says like we'll do proactive outreach via social media because we don't know what that's going to look like in a year from now. We don't know what that's.
It's always changing.
Change the algorithm next week. I mean, posts that 2 years ago on Facebook we were getting thousands of engagements with. Now we get sometimes dozens, and I'm like, we have 200 and something thousand followers on our Facebook page. I mean, it's pay to play now on many social media platforms. So I don't know. No science. There's nothing that I know of.
Thank you. I appreciate the honesty.
Well, and I'd say from what I've seen, again, you'll hear some more things this afternoon from some of the breakout sessions, but as someone who's worked with a lot of those folks in the grantees, I'll say that building what Jenifer said is probably just to experiment and to try and see what works, because each one of them probably have different successes of what worked and what works for different audiences and things too. So anyway, just don't be afraid to try, which I know you are. So.
And there's some really good persona work on the RBFF website. So if you know what your target market is, then it tells you which ways you should try to reach those groups, and that could be a good tool for you too.
Definitely will look into that.
We have time for one more question, comment? Yeah, Jim. Do you have Mike, Rachel, sorry.
Thanks. Jim Fredericks with Idaho Fish and Game. So for the three up on the stage and anybody else later, I'd just be curious to know, we're kind of talking about marketing synonymously with R3, recognizing marketing's generally embedded in R3. Do you all have, well, some of you have an R3 plan. Do you have a separate marketing plan, or is it embedded? And like I said, I'd be curious to hear what you all have and then anybody else as well.
So we have an R3 plan, and that's mainly focused on retention. We also have a marketing plan that's mainly just selling licenses. We want to make as much money as possible. The last 2 years, just like everybody else, it's been all about retention. Just operation retention is what we're calling it. And that's where we're focusing all of our efforts at, is retention. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
So we also have a separate marketing plan and a calendar of communications, and we also work on a thing that we like to call agency relevancy, or being important to everybody, not just the people with the hook and bullet crowd. So we do invest in that in a marketing way. But like with the Venn diagrams of marketing and R3, like some days, like the difference if I am thinking in my marketing mind and in my R3 mind is marketing, I'm selling a widget, and as soon as you got that widget, I don't care if you go fishing or hunting with that license one time, I just don't care. You bought the thing. If I'm wearing my R3 hat, then I care. Then I'm like, I want the tradition of the sport. I want everybody to love hunting and fishing as much as I do. So that, in my mind, that's how I separate the two.
I think we're out of time, but I wanted to answer real quick,
please.
if that's okay. Yeah. So we're in the process of developing an R3 plan and a content calendar, like Jenifer mentioned. But you mentioned that overlap between marketing and R3. I spend a lot of my time on the phone or in the office with our communications and marketing director, and I apologize to him all the time for taking so much of his time. But those two things are almost synonymous. There's so much overlap.
Thank you, Jim, for asking that question, because there is a lot of intersection there. And again, I'll encourage you all to talk about what you have going on in your states tomorrow in the huddles discussion, so hopefully you can learn more there too. But I really want to thank these three individuals for sharing their top 10 list, and really appreciate all that you have to share. Please pick their brains throughout the whole conference, and I appreciate the dialogue and the sharing that everyone did here today, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.